Hi everyone, my name is Arnold Morales. Start off by saying thank you, Jamie, for giving me this opportunity to speak to the engineering students. I was an engineering student a while ago and I love IB Tech, so let's get to it. So a little bit about me. I graduated May 2015 from IB Tech. I graduated with my associates in pre-engineering. I graduated magna cum laude. Here's a picture of me at graduation. I was the commencement speaker for graduation. In 2018, I graduated with my bachelor's and my master's in mechanical engineering from IUPUI. Here is a picture of me with my other two friends. These two friends were the same classmates I had from Calculus 1 at IB Tech, and we went all 6 years together. And then this is me now. I work at Boeing in Seattle. I am a systems engineer at Boeing, working for the biggest aerospace company in the world. So what are we going to talk about today? That was a little bit about me, just a quick sneak peek. I'm going to talk about when I started IB Tech. Who was I when I started? I'm going to talk about the internships I've had, where it's probably where most of you are really interested in knowing about my engineering experience. I'm going to talk about the engineering jobs I had. Talk about my favorite parts of being an engineer. I'm going to talk about and then after that's going to be like most of the technical engineering portion. And after that, if you're still curious, you can watch the rest, which is I'm going to be talking about my highlights of IB Tech Community College. I'm also going to be talking about how I got those opportunities. And then I'll have a little kind of how you can learn more later. When I started at IB Tech Community College, I started 2013. I was working at a warehouse, Amazon warehouse actually, the Whitestown, Indiana one. I did not like my job. I was not happy with my job. I thought I could give more. And then I was like, okay, what are these people doing, my managers at Amazon, that I'm not doing so I can be them? And then I was like, okay, they have associate's degrees or things like that. IB Tech. When I started IB Tech, I was a GED graduate. Didn't finish high school, traditional way. I was working at a warehouse in 2013. I was working at an Amazon warehouse in Whitestown, Indiana. I didn't really like my job. I wasn't happy there. I'm moving boxes around for 10 hours a day, making decent salary, but still nothing crazy. And just working 60 hours a week to make all that overtime so it could feel like real money. I was wondering, what do my managers have that I don't at Amazon? And certificates. I'm like, okay, I'll go do one of those. Signed up for IB Tech. And summer 2013, that was the decision that changed my life. IB Tech's logo is changing lives, and I really believe that. At IB Tech, I was a first generation college student. That means that I have no one to ask about college. Parents, my brothers. I was a low income student. That means I had no idea how I was going to pay for college. And I was Hispanic. There wasn't too many people that looked like me at school, especially in engineering. It was interesting because I didn't know what an engineer was. How did I get into engineering? So I went to the career services at IB Tech and I took a aptitude test, and it said, oh, you like math and science, you would be good at engineering. And I was like mechanical engineering because I was really passionate about cars and mechanisms. So I was like, okay, let's try this mechanical engineering. So now we get to the internships. I worked at Aerodyne Engineering. So Aerodyne Engineering is a small aerospace company in Indianapolis. Actually, let's go to their website. So Aerodyne Engineering, small company in Indianapolis. Well, actually, I would consider it medium size. They're mostly known for their slip rings. They do these slip rings, which are kind of this contact, kind of like hub for all the contacts for when you put like on a jet engine and you put a lot of instrumentation on it, gauges, things like that, it can rotate. And then if you have all those wires, how are those wires going to rotate and not break? So they have this like little brushes, and that's what the slip ring is. They do manufacturing for aerospace parts. They do in-house testing, so that's pretty cool. And that's north of Indianapolis. They do engineering work. They do on-site instrumentation and then instrumentation. That was the main thing that I worked on. I was part of the instrumentation department. That's kind of their big thing. So if you don't know what instrumentation is kind of putting sensors on parts. So when you're testing them, you can find out how hot they get, how much wind or how much force they're feeling, how much stress is on the part. So things like that. So these are kind of installations of different types of instrumentation. So I was an intern there. I worked full-time during the summer and then part-time during the school year. It was a lot of fun. My next internship was my first really big aerospace company internship. That was with Northrop Grumman. So Northrop Grumman is one of the top defense contractors. I worked at Hill Air Force Base. So there's a nuclear missile model. And this is where I used to work, Falcon Hill. So here's the Air Force Base. It was in Utah. It was really cool to work at Air Force Base for a while. I interned there 1 summer, 2 summers full-time, and then during the school year, part-time remote. And then Northrop Grumman, they do a lot of military, Air Force, and different kind of airplanes and capabilities. So here's one of the drones. These are some of the drones they make. They make these autonomous vehicles. That autonomous means that no one's driving it. It just thinks by itself pretty much. They make all these other things that I'm not a big fan of this website, so I'll actually show you Wikipedia because since I moved from Northrop, things changed. And then they do some space. They bought another company called Orbital ATK, so they do a lot of the space, like the missiles, the rocket boosters that are going to go to Mars. Let me see. I think I have here. Yeah. So here are some of the big things that Northrop Grumman does. A 90,000 employee company. It's a big company. So Northrop Grumman does the B-2 bomber, the Spirit. It's a long time ago they used to do that. They do like the drones, the Global Hawk. They work on the F-30. They work on this like Fire Scout, this like autonomous little, I think it's like a drone helicopter to go find fires and go look at them in California. More drones. This is a big drone. Oh, and one of my favorite things, the James Webb Telescope. So if you've seen the Hubble telescope, it's the one that takes pictures in space, like really far away galaxies and things like that. So this James Webb Telescope is supposed to be like the future of finding out what the universe has for us. In theory, this is going to be able to see so far that we might even be able to see how a Big Bang happens. So that's going to be really exciting to see when that launches. I actually got to see it in person in LA. Work on F-22 Raptors, and a lot of cool stuff. So Orbital ATK was a company they bought, and they do like rockets. So I actually went, and when I was in Utah, I actually went to Orbital ATK to see a rocket static test, which was the rocket throwing all the fire and just igniting the engine. But it was like horizontal, and it was stationary, so it didn't move. So it was still pretty cool to feel the force of the rocket. All right, so those are 2 internships I had. This one during Ivy Tech, this one during when I was at IUPUI. Engineering jobs. When I was doing my master's in IUPUI, I worked at Praxair. Praxair, they do coding for aerospace parts. And actually, before we get to Praxair, I was giving classes at Ivy Tech, so when we changed lives, that's not a joke. I was giving CAD courses for design technology, so I was teaching SolidWorks, I was teaching some geometric dimensioning and tolerances. So a lot of fun kind of entry-level courses. So let's go to Praxair. So I worked at Praxair part-time, and then I worked at Boeing. Now I work at Boeing. As soon as I graduated college, I went straight to Boeing. There's a picture of me with a 777X airplane. That's the airplane that's the wings are so big that to fit in some airports, the wingtips have to fold. So here's Praxair. Praxair, they do coating, so pretty much kind of like they paint, high-tech paint over parts, which is, if you tell someone it's paint, they'll probably get mad, but it's coating, so it's like a coat of metal over the metal. So initially I worked with them. When I was working with them, I helped develop their curriculum. And I don't give specifics on what I did at Northrop because a lot of that stuff is sensitive. In Utah, I guess the most I can tell you is in Utah, they work a lot on ICBMs, some nuclear missiles, things like that. At Praxair, it's more of a commercial company, so it's a little bit, I can share a little bit more. I don't know what I can share, so that's why I try to share less, not get in trouble. So Praxair, they do all these coatings different ways. So they have like high velocity oxy-fuel. They have the D gun, which is one of their top things. It's pretty cool. It's pretty much like a huge machine gun that shoots metal, like bullets, parts to a part and just gets attached mechanically. So let's take a look at that. So see there it's shooting it, and it's really noisy and it really shakes everything. So it's pretty cool. Sorry, can't have the noise or the sound. Oh, Boeing. So I imagine most of you know what Boeing is. Boeing is the biggest aerospace company in the world. We work on commercial airplanes. So all the airliners, there's pretty much two big airline companies, Airbus and Boeing. Boeing US and Airbus European. So I worked on the 777X for a while. Here are some of the other ones. Boeing does a lot of defense work also. Have pretty much all this defense stuff. Air Force One, B-52. And then we also support a lot of the other airplanes. And then they do space. They're doing the capsule that's going to go to Mars, the rockets. So a lot of really cool stuff. I work on commercial, and I work as a systems engineer. I'm in a rotation program, moving around the company to get a better understanding of the company. I get to work pretty much with engineers, with a whole bunch of engineers from different disciplines, and kind of integrate them. That's what's a systems engineer, an integrator between different groups. At Praxair, I was a design engineer, so I was designing equipment and tooling. So for when you coat these parts, there's like, okay, maybe I want just this part coated, but I don't want this inside. I would make a tool that would cover up the inside. And then yeah, it sounds easy, but then you have to like figure out the tolerances so it doesn't like stick to the part and things like that. I would design the tooling, and then I would design equipment to be able to do this. That was kind of my two roles. And I was also helping with the curriculum since I was a professor at IB Tech. Yeah, so that's pretty much what my engineering jobs are. Favorite parts of being an engineer, I think the work hours. I'm a big fan. Thing is, like, this varies a lot. Industry, it varies a lot of also your major. If you're like a computer engineer and you work at Google, you probably work a lot more hours. But in my case, I work for aerospace, and aerospace is pretty standard 40 work hours. So I love 40 work week, because I can go to work at 7, leave at 3:30, and then go enjoy time with my family. I have a 10-month baby, so I love my time off. The second thing I like about being an engineer is I paid to think and to be creative. A lot of really cool things. I get to think and like really push myself and get paid for it, which I really enjoy. I get to work on meaningful products. If you noticed, I work on defense. I've worked commercial airplanes that connect the world. So I feel very passionate about the products I work on. Bragging rights. It's really cool to say I'm an engineer when I introduce myself to people. I feel a lot of pride for that. I worked really hard in school so I could become an engineer, and people really, and it shouldn't matter what people think, but do say a lot like, oh, that's really cool, and they're really impressed with it. So that's always really cool. Salary and benefits. I feel like I paid really well as an engineer, especially because I work on meaningful products. I like what I do. I know like starting salaries around here for I guess in Indianapolis, starting salaries for a bachelor's, I think like $60,000 a year. So that's not bad. I know Seattle, where I live, it's much more expensive, so the salaries are much higher. And the sky's the limit. I think with the engineering degree, you not only become an engineer, but you also learn how to think, learn how to think critically, and that helps you in so many other aspects of life. And after engineering, you can go and do anything. You can go become a manager. You can go become an entrepreneur, an executive. There's so many things that I'm looking for in the future that excite me about being an engineer. So now so that was what I do as an engineer. Now a little bit of IB Tech. So some highlights from my IB Tech Community College. I was able to sit behind President Obama on his speech on free community college. I had conversations with Mike Pence on kind of student engagement, kind of transferring things like that. I was a NASA aerospace scholar, and this is actually something that you can all apply for. So you should be doing this. And then I was on the news for IB Tech, like, oh, local student to visit NASA. I was the first generation of students that went to NASA from IB Tech. And then there was more after us. I also, okay, so I won a lot of awards for my involvement, and I'll share a little bit later why I won these awards. I was an honorary member for the National Society of Leadership and Success. La Plaza, which is a nonprofit in Indianapolis, gave me an award for Young Latino Leader, pretty much because I was the spokesperson for IB Tech when it came to Hispanic STEM initiatives. Anytime high school students, groups wanted to come and learn about IB Tech, they always invited me to give a presentation or to be a student on the panel. And then I won a whole bunch of awards for the IB Tech. This is the Student Organization Awards. These are my buddies that we pretty much did the IB Tech thing together. Joe was the second generation that went to NASA. And I was first generation that went to NASA. And then we won like Student Organization of the Year. It was like, I think it was a nomination for Student Leader. And then like Advisor of the Year and Event of the Year. So it was really cool doing all that. So how I got all these opportunities. I think the main reason why I got all these opportunities and why I was able to get a job at Northrop and then Boeing was because I started the first engineering society at IB Tech. It's called IB Tech Engineering Society. I started together with my buddy Chris and Tung, which Chris is right here and Tung's right here. And those are the two you see finishing the masters with me. So we're started from the bottom. We used to joke about that, started from the bottom, now we're here. We went on facility tours, and actually, let's go to the website. So this website hasn't been updated since 2015. So don't judge. So IB Tech Engineering Society, see the events. So we did facility tours. We did the Citizens Steam Plant, Citizens Energy Steam Plant. We did Delora IndyCar Factory. We visited 3D parts manufacturing, right when 3D manufacturing was starting to be a big thing. And we visited Praxair. That's kind of how I made the connections to later get an internship at Praxair. Since I didn't know what engineer was before I became an engineer, stuff like this, like guest speakers, really helped me understand what engineers do. We had transfer event to learn how to go to the IUPUI, how to make sure IUPUI's admissions officers came over and talked to us about transferring. We had Meet an Engineer Day. Here was our first one. You could see like it's not that much people. Our second one started to get bigger names and bigger crowds. And then our third one was like really big. We had IB Tech's president, which was an engineer. We had the former NASA director of engineering, Dan. He's actually the president of the AIAA, American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics now. And you can see it's starting to get much bigger. We had guest speakers from Engineers Without Borders, and then just general board meetings where, aside from just, we made really good friendships. Like I pretty much can see any of these people on the streets and have a really good conversation with them. And some of them are still like really good friends. We had 3D printing workshop. And then we were involved in competitions, and we did some projects that were funded by the school. So it was really cool. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because you can get involved in these things too. And right now I know the Engineering Society has kind of disappeared, but you can just restart that. And I think that doing that will give you a whole bunch of opportunities. How did I get all these opportunities? One, experience. I think I had a lot of engineering experience for my level of education. And how did I get that experience? I got that by being involved with the Engineering Society and doing the projects. I got that by applying nonstop for internships and getting internships. I demonstrated I was a leader. I was the president of the Engineering Society. I did a lot of volunteer work, and that volunteer work made me meet a lot of people. And that brings me to the next one, networking. I knew a lot of people because of all the volunteer work, leadership role I was doing. So all of this like comes together. There was one person at IB Tech that told me this. He said, Arnold, once you do one thing great, all the other things just keep on coming. Like it keeps on coming, keeps on adding up, and then you do really well. I applied and I asked. I was not shy about asking for opportunities, and I applied pretty much everywhere. And then I got good grades. I was at the tutor center nonstop with the Engineering Society. I was part of we had a study group, and we just helped each other. We helped each other a lot with studying for the tests. That's how I think I got all those opportunities, and you can do that also. If you want to learn more, you can check out my website. I'm not sure if it's going to be updated by the time I start this, and why you want to check out my website, because I'm going to start a podcast really soon, And that's actually the last bullet point. I should probably change these around. So I'm starting a podcast pretty soon, and I'll show you the topics on the next page. You can also, so I just made a Facebook group called Nontraditional College Success. I just made it pretty much for you. So anytime I talk to students, I'm going to tell them, hey, if you want to keep on learning things, go into that group and you can ask other people for advice. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a lot of recruiters and connections on LinkedIn. So once you connect with me, if I see IB Tech, I will definitely accept you. And that will expand your network automatically. And then so pretty much on the website, I'll be sharing when the episodes of the podcast comes. So on the website, there'll be like a subscribe thing. Here are some of the future topics on the podcast. I'm going to interview successful non-traditional college students. So community college, first generation, low income, interview recruiters. I was actually a recruiter for several companies. So I'll talk about that myself, and then I'll interview recruiters. I'll interview scholarship committees so you can learn what it takes to get a scholarship. I'll speak about how I got more than $80,000 in student aid, how I got internships from all these companies, Northrop Grumman, Praxair, Cummins, Rolls-Royce, and why I will talk about why several companies flew me around the country to interview. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Orbital ATK, Pratt & Whitney, all aerospace. I was really passionate about aerospace. Talking about internships, how I got a full-time job straight out of college, talk about my experience at NASA and how you can apply, how I got to sit behind Obama, pretty much the same, how I got to have conversations with Mike Pence, how I got to go to conferences paid by my college, how I ran a successful student organization, how I became the commencement speaker for graduation, how I got the opportunity to present my school in presentations and talk to people, how I got mentors in the top professionals fields. When I was at IB Tech, I had my first Boeing mentor, and it was pretty cool because now that Boeing mentor is like a really good friend, and we work in the same building. How I got the awards, and then I'm going to be talking about many more other future podcast topics. So please sign up to a website, sign up to the group, and then be waiting for the podcast. I'm not making any money off of this, so I'm just doing it to help students because I know how it is to be in your boat, and I definitely want the best for all of you. Thank you.